Welcome back. We've been speaking with Dr. James Meschino, and now we're joined by Dr. Deborah Kopansky-Giles, also an associate professor at the Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College and the chiropractic program lead at St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you very much.
We've been talking about so much in our attempts to, postpone what at one time was thought the inevitable in aging and develop optimal health. You're joining us actually from a bit of a different background, from thinking of chiropractic and caring for the elderly. As we get to that step, we only got to 45, 50 years old before our time bombs just about had me off this planet. And I think further along, still hormonal issues and other impacts on our bodies as we get older. What are you seeing? How can we prevent degeneration in such a way that if we're visiting the chiropractor, it's really just for maintenance, not for serious problems?
Well, to set it up, because Deborah sees these patients every day, that people have to understand that for men after the age of 40, there's a 1% decline in their testosterone level each year. So between age 40 and 70, it's a 30% decline. And so that impacts their lean mass, their muscle mass starts to really decay and catabolize and break down. So someone who was really strong at 40, who's not really exercising and doing physical work and getting the protein they need, and you need more protein as you age, that sets them up for musculoskeletal problems and weakness and strains and falls and you get into this point in life where you're more frail. And so for women after the age of 50, of course, with menopause, there's a significant decline in estrogen and progesterone and 50% decline in testosterone. They get weaker, their bones, the calcium they once had in bone is now leaking out of bone into the bloodstream, filters through the kidney, and every time you urinate, you're urinating out calcium that used to be in your bones. So there's an increased demand for calcium, vitamin D, and weight-bearing exercise. And this leads to all kinds of problems when you don't look after that would bring you to a chiropractic office or even the office of an orthopedic surgeon if you fracture a hip. But Deborah can address the things you see day to day.
Yes, you're absolutely right. What we do see, especially in women, is that actually what's very interesting is that we know that women live on average to the age of 86 while men live to 82. But Health Canada statistics tell us that actually men are more healthy as they age.
Now, because the women are looking after them.
That's probably true, but it's also probably due to the women live 4 years longer, so you're going to have more complex health issues. But also because women tend to live alone. And so they don't have the engagement. Oftentimes they're isolated. Men usually are married and they're living with a spouse until they're 82, where women often aren't. And so what we do see is the isolationism, which means that women aren't out there being active. But when we look at what biologically happens to women, especially with their loss of osteoporosis, we also know it's mostly related, really, to lack of physical activity. And that weight-bearing exercises and performing weight-bearing exercises on a regular day-to-day basis helps maintain the level of calcium in bone. We know that inactivity is one of the major causes for osteoporosis, along with genetics, which you can't really control, along with insufficient dietary intake and the effects of menopause. There's a lot you can reverse by being physically active, and it brings all kinds of excellent other benefits as well.
Okay, so let's talk about reversal.
No, when you combine, I mean, here's the thing we didn't know until about 2 months ago, but in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, the article by Lapp showed us that if you took people who were older individuals, 70 and older, who had already had their first fracture, gave them 1,400 IUs of vitamin D every day and 1,500 milligrams of elemental calcium. And they gave the other group a placebo. And they still had a little bit of vitamin D, but minimal amounts. And they waited a year and they did bone density testing. And they said, this is remarkable. We didn't know we could do this, but just with vitamin D and calcium alone, we actually increased their bone density. They said, but the group that actually added exercise got a slightly greater response. So when you put all these things together, you get a great response, which brings you to this. Once you have osteoporosis or you have that first fall, a lot of doctors put you on these anti-resorptive biphosphonate drugs. And they say, this is the only we can slow down the rate of loss, but you can't really gain bone. But the truth is, going back to the early 1990s at Tufts University, the research by Nelson in the Journal of the American Medical Association showed that if you took postmenopausal women and you had them do just 5 strength training exercises with sufficient calcium, they increased their bone density in a natural way. So what you're saying is 100%
Yeah,
accurate.
it's
But when you
absolutely
combine
true.
all these factors together, you get absolutely a remarkable change, even in older people. So people shouldn't just say, I guess that's it, I'll just take the drugs and I'm going to give up.
no,
It's
so
a
it's
bad
so
approach.
important.
It's not too old to start. You're not too old to start.
No.